everybody. Before Glen gets started with the meeting, I just want to point out restrooms are right out this door and on your right-hand side as you go out, so feel free. And then refreshments at the back, please help yourself. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you everyone for coming. A big thanks to Glen for hosting us up here at this gorgeous spot. I think this takes the cake for most scenic venue in the First District. Just to introduce the folks here tonight, I am your supervisor, Manu Koenig. For those of you I haven't had a chance to meet yet, with me is First District Analyst Christina Glavis. And we also have our Assistant Director of Public Works, Steve Wiesner. Steve is the Assistant Director of the Transportation Division within Public Works and Planning have merged into now the Community Development and Infrastructure Department, but Steve is our roads guy, so you couldn't have a better member of the county family here to have this discussion. And I'm really excited to be able to drill down on this topic of county road quality, because it's an issue throughout the county, and it always comes up at all of my town hall meetings, but there's never really enough time to sufficiently address it. So what I want to do tonight is just get all the pieces out there on the table, the information that I have, so you can help understand the situation, and then let's do as best we can to try to solve it or identify the solutions that you think would work best. So I'm going to start with some information about what the problem is, why we have this problem in the county, and then what we can do about it, and there should be plenty of time for questions. So let's start with the problem, which you're all very familiar with. But before, just a little vocabulary here. I'm going to talk about pavement condition index, and that's the scientific term we have for the quality of the roads. So you can kind of see a recently repaved road here. That's 100, very good. At the bottom of this road is probably somewhere about 10 or 16 or less. That's a failed road. Countywide, the average pavement condition index is a 48, so the poor quality. If we look at Glen Haven's road conditions, you can see here you've got towards the bottom, from Cherryvale to Butler, it's a 39 pavement condition index. From Butler to Tola Ranch Road, 49. And then it does decrease from there, 28, 14, 13. So that's what you're feeling as you get further up the road here. And all in all, the length of Glen Haven is about 3.25 miles. There's approximately 146 parcels that have access via Glen Haven Road or the side streets. We all love Glen. I hope I made that clear, but it doesn't help that there are buses that use this road regularly. Buses do have an impact that is significantly greater than regular cars on roads, and so that is also leading to some of the faster deterioration. This is a look countywide at the pavement condition index. I mentioned the average is a 48, right, for the entire network there. And then for local roads, we consider the bottom half of Glen Haven to be a collector because there's sufficient traffic on it. You can see the average for collectors is 54, and for local roads it's a little bit lower at 40. And there's some examples of other roads throughout the county. That one on the bottom is Paulson Road with a 17 PCI. The top, Swanton Road with a 51. This is an issue countywide. So, even just looking at comparable roads with a similar pavement condition index in the First District, and we've got about a third of all the roads in the county in the First District. You can see roads with a pavement condition index of 14 or below, there's 10 miles of those. With a 28 or below, 36 miles of those. And roads with a 39 or below, 56 miles. And so this is just to stress the size of our county road network. It's immense, right? It's 600 miles basically, and it's enough pavement to get all the way from here to the Oregon border. So it's a massive amount of infrastructure to deal with. Close to $1 billion total investment. And you can see here that we really need about $24 million a year to be invested in county roads just to maintain the current pavement condition index of 48, which is not sufficient, right? That's in that yellow zone, or poor. So we really want to be investing more than $24 million a year, but we're not, and so we actually anticipate this black trend line of consistently decreasing quality of roads. So what are the funding sources? First of all, there's the 2016 Measure D, right? That's the half-cent sales tax. That was huge, right? We would be in really bad shape without that dedicated funding for local roads. We use it as a match all the time to get more state and federal money. There's SB1, that's also state money, and a lot of that gets used as towards storm repairs. And so we could be making more progress if it weren't for all the storm damage that we're seeing, but because we've got to make those storm repairs, it's eating up a lot of the SB1 funding. And a couple other things here, refuse vehicle impact fee, some grant funding from like state gas taxes, what we call RSTIP program, and some federal monies as well. All in all, that totals, you can see about $8 million a year average funding. As I said though, we need $24 million a year. So in summary of our county road network today, it's about close to $1 billion investment in the road network. Overall PCI 48. On average, we expect to get $8 million a year. I should say we had a coup this year with getting $7 million specifically allocated from that RSTIP funding on top of what we already have. So that is a really good year for county roads, and you are going to see a lot of progress here in the next year. But as far as the long-term situation, not a solution. And if we don't invest more in our roads, within they will, in the next 10 years, deteriorate to a 33 PCI. So why do we have this problem? I mean, is there something unique going on in Santa Cruz? Actually, yes. So, of course, the common answer when we talk about roads is, but why? I pay all these property taxes, thousands and thousands of dollars of property taxes. How do you not have enough money to fix this? Well, the county does not get all of those property taxes. This is actually where your property taxes go. Mostly to schools, autonomous special districts like fire districts or water districts get 10%, cities 5%. The county general fund there gets 13%. So 13 cents of every dollar you pay goes to the county. And this is because of Prop 13, which thank God for. I don't know if anyone could afford to continue to live here if it weren't for Prop 13. But at the same time, what it did was, when it passed back in 1977, at the time, the average property tax for all those different entities I mentioned was 2.67%. And so within one budget season, the state had to figure out how we were going to go to 1%. And they took an as-you-were approach. So they said, whatever percentage of the property taxes you're getting today, you're going to get that percentage of 1%. They basically shrunk everyone down. And it got rid of 70% of all property tax revenues pretty much overnight. Well, because we were a rural county at that time, we had a pretty low percentage of the property taxes. And so we're stuck there. Even though we've since then seen a lot of the population growth in the unincorporated area of the county, unincorporated, but Live Oak, SoCal, these are all within the unincorporated part of the county, even though they're essentially urbanized areas today. But we can't change that 13%. But if you look at what other counties get across the state, the average is actually more like 20%. So, and even in San Francisco, where they were using a lot of the property tax money at the time it had passed, it's a very mature city, they get 70% of the property taxes. So it's not fair. It's just not fair, but it's so complicated, the apportionment system within the state, that it's also really hard to change. If that wasn't bad enough, and I know you can't see any of this, so I'll just describe it. Basically, our sales tax percentage is really low as well, because it was based on where people have historically spent money. It hasn't entirely caught up to the whole online buying system yet. And so our cities get a lot more of the sales taxes than we do in the unincorporated area. And you can see this is the statewide average here is about $1,500 per resident, and we're down here at $462 per resident as far as sales tax. That too is something that would take statewide action to really change as far as making sure we're getting our fair share of sales tax revenue. And so you see this math reflected in the quality of our roads. Here's Santa Cruz County, as I mentioned, with the 48, and some of those other counties like San Mateo, even the city of Santa Cruz with higher sales tax revenue in Marin County, you know, they're all, actually their PCI average is a lot better. I mean, 67 to 74, that's up there in the green zone. And we're at 48 because of the way our funding structure works. So then the natural question is, well, let's cut something. Cut somebody else and put more money towards roads. Natural suggestion. So this is really what, about $1 billion flows through the county every year, but it's not all discretionary, right? A lot of it is coming from the state government, and a lot of it goes towards health and human services, and it's all like, hey, you have to do this with that money. I don't like it. It really reduces the amount of flexibility I have as your supervisor to improve things, to say, hey, let's spend more money on roads, or even, you know, with all the health problems and homelessness issues that we have in the county, obviously trying to spend more of it upstream on housing would be great. But we're so locked into these grants that we get from the state that it's hard to have that flexibility. So what we do have full discretion over at the county is actually about $174 million. And you can see we spend $92 million of that on public safety and justice, the sheriff's office, and our jails. $34 million for health and human services. Now that gets a lot more money from the state, so that actually goes up to more like $400 million total. But we use this money as matching funds for a lot of that. General government, that's things like the auditor, controller, treasurer, tax collector. Land use and community services. This is both like planning as well as parks, and then some other things here, contingencies, debt service, etc. But our other departments are not doing great either. The sheriff has 11 unfunded deputy positions that they used to have that have been unfunded because of budget shortfalls. We have a great medium security jail facility. Half of it's been closed for lack of staffing. We're hoping finally to get enough correctional officers to be able to reopen that. But again, it's not a great situation either. Our Blaine Street, our women's minimum security jail has been closed for several years as well because of lack of staffing. So, you know, these massive investments we've made in infrastructure, we don't even have enough staffing to keep them up. You know, everyone complains about the planning department being really slow to get through, and it is, and we're making strides to try to improve that. Part of it was the combination with the Public Works Department so that we have a one-stop counter when you go in there with an application for a new project, and we can really help you all on the same floor there and have one person looking out for moving your application through the process. But, you know, to planning's, if not, you know, on their side, they've had 6 unfunded positions as well. So even they're short-staffed, and that doesn't help. Parks has lost at least 5 positions since 2018. So even though Parks seem like, oh, that's an easy one to cut, they're barely hanging on as well.
This is all Santa Cruz County?
Yes, this is all just here in our county.
So nothing
sir.
up like Boulder Creek in that direction?
Well, so Boulder Creek is part of the unincorporated Santa Cruz County.
Okay, then down toward south would be
yeah, I mean, Aptos and is also an unincorporated county. There's the city of. There's only 4 cities within Santa Cruz County. It's Watsonville, Santa Cruz, Scotts Valley, and Capitola.
Okay.
Everything else is the unincorporated county, and me and the rest of the county government are responsible for it.
Right.
So what can we do about this situation? You know, so again, we need at least $16 million just a year in additional funding just to maintain the current pavement quality. So here's some potential funding measures. I mean, obviously the first thing that occurs to me, and I'm sure it occurs to you, is, well, let's fix this inequity. Why are we getting 13%? That's not fair. Again, though, that's going to take a statewide ballot initiative to increase our county property tax share. If we got to the average 20%, hey, that's $23 million a year, problem solved. But I'll get into what it takes for a statewide ballot initiative here in a second. The other thing we could do is look at a countywide increase to CSA 9D, our road maintenance fund. It hasn't been increased since, I think, 93. It's only about $54 a year. So we'd have to increase it by $400 to fill that $16 million hole. Even though if we increase it by $100 per parcel per year, that would be another $4.5 million. That would be pretty significant. We'd start to see some significant gains from that. What other revenue measures could we look at? Well, I mentioned cuts. You tell me where you think we can see those cuts. I'm happy to discuss that. We could do another half-cent sales tax measure similar to Measure D. That's the idea is floating around where we could put at least half of that towards roads and maybe half towards homelessness and housing issues. That would be about $9 million total. If we put half of it towards roads, that's about $4.5 million. There are some taxes in the county where the county gets all of it, right? As opposed to property taxes, we get just 13 cents on the dollar. That is transient occupancy tax. That's the hotel tax. There is going to be something on your June ballot here that you'll get soon to propose increasing that a little bit, which should raise an additional $2 million. There's cannabis cultivation. The county gets all of those fees or all of those taxes. If we doubled cannabis production in the county, that would be $5 million. And looking at more wedding and event permits, that could be low millions, that we see as well. Now, I mean, those all have impacts on quality of life as well, so I don't know how palatable those are, but there are options we can discuss. And then finally, it's really the take it in your own hands approach, which would be a dedicated Glen Haven County service area, where pay $400 a year, we solve the problem. That generates about $58,000 a year, but it would raise over $1 million over the next 20 years, exclusively for Glen Haven Road. And I think we need about $1.4 million to completely repair the road from top to bottom. So it would mostly get us there. I'll just go a little bit more into each one of these options, and then we'll open it up for questions and discussions. So the statewide ballot initiative. I mean, you tell me to go out and fight for this, I'm happy to, because I said every county department is suffering right now from this low ratio we get. So, I mean, it is a huge problem to solve. The big interest group, though, that we're going to come up against is probably the schools, right? Because they're that 57%. They could be hurt if we change things. So that would be delicate. Overall, in the state, there's 22 million registered voters, which would mean I think this would have to be actually most likely a constitutional amendment rather than a statute. So we need close to 1 million signatures to get it qualified. And then the cost of successful ballot initiatives in 2020 ranged from $1.4 million all the way up to $205 million. So, I mean, multi-million dollar campaign, I'd probably be hitting you all up for at least a $500 donation to make that work. The increase to CSA 9D, this would be county-wide. And I don't know, I think most of you participated in the ballot that was for CSA 48, the fire rate increase. This would be similar to that process where everyone in the area would be mailed a ballot, and then you would need to get the majority of ballots returned voting in favor in order for it to pass. If we got about $100 per year in additional funding from this, or per parcel, $100 per parcel, that would enable a CAPE or slurry seal on Glen Haven Road about every 12 years. So definitely an improved level of service, and this is what a CAPE, I think this is a slurry seal right here, that's what that looks like. Then I mentioned a dedicated Glen Haven Road CSA. So for this, you would just need a majority of residents on the affected road, in this case Glen Haven, and the side streets to vote in favor. You would have to form a board, a local board for the CSA. There's some administration fees. You can get more details on that if you'd like. And it would be considered a subzone of the countywide road maintenance CSA, again, county service area. $400, as I said, per parcel per year would raise about $1.2 million over 20 years. And again, the cost for a full chip seal, which is what you see here, as you can see it's more substantial, would be about 1.4 million. So it would cover the majority of that. We could bond against those revenues and get the work done right away. And then hope to do more regular maintenance to keep it up to speed every 5 to 7 years. The rate would not, I mean, it wouldn't be the same for every parcel. It would be based on total, whether or not your parcel is developed or undeveloped. We're going to charge people with a house would be charged more or less than someone with a vacant lot, and it might also be based on frontage. As we move forward with this, we conduct an engineering study and create a capital improvement plan to really see how we'd space out these investments. I'll just end on what Public Works is committed to doing already, and that is this year, Upper Glen Haven is scheduled for regular maintenance between September and October, and that'll be to do spot hatching and pothole filling, similar to what you saw on the lower part of the road, will be done on the upper part of the road this year, this fall. Last year, of course, you saw some ditching and cleaning of debris to ensure proper water flow along the road, as well as some restriping. And then we've had in the last 5 years, 2 repairs to the storm damage. And I should, just want to reiterate that Public Works is absolutely committed to keeping this road open and accessible. And that includes clearing down trees and ensuring that it's passable. So that's all the information I've got for you. Let's have a conversation. Again, we've got our county road expert here, Assistant Director Wiesner as well. Questions?
So,
Yes, sir.
I want to understand the $400 per person per year.
Per parcel.
Per parcel. So if everybody pitched in $400 per parcel per year on Glen Haven, that would fix the problem. Is that right?
Pretty much.
In 20 years?
For 20 years.
Pretty much.
Yeah, per year.
In
per
20 years.
No, we would bond against the money and essentially fix it right away.
And then we'd be paying for 20 years, 400,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
and then it ends, or?
But it's only 60,000 a year, right? 60,000 a year.
It adds up, right. Everyone paid 400 per parcel per year. That generates about $60,000 a year. And so, but we could bond against that revenue stream, assuming everyone's going to keep paying it for 20 years, and front load the work so that we can all start enjoying the benefits right away, bring the road quality up, and then of course, just like regular maintenance on your house, repainting early prevents more expensive fixes down the line. That it's really would be a good strategy here as well. Yes, sir.
Last summer, I followed a machine called a pothole filler or something like that down the road. And within a month, the holes that it filled were gone. They were back. If you go back down the road tonight, right opposite the 1.18 mile marker, you'll see the 3 holes that it filled last summer back again.
Yeah, they just
That
pop
it's,
open every.
the machine didn't do, I think, what you wanted it to do. Because the potholes were back and no rain or anything. It just put some gravel in there and went. So pothole filling really, unless it's attacked well, and that machine was not attacking it well, is kind of a waste of time and money. So this is off that subject though. Granite Creek Road is beautiful now. How did they pay for that?
Steve?
So, good question, great question, and good feedback on the pothole patcher too. We have varying degrees of success with that machine. We try it, but as you can see, what the crew did last year with the more substantial kind of full width grinds, doing the wheel running grinds, doing the edge grinding, much better. That's our plan moving forward with maintenance, and really, our hope is if we can get the crew out here, we have 600 miles of roads, right? So we can't be everywhere at once, but, and not necessarily on every road every year. But our goal is to try to continue with that methodology, kind of working all the way up towards the top. But to answer your question on how did we get the funding for Granite Creek Road, that was actually federal aid funding. So that was what Monica had spoke to earlier with the RSTP money. That's
They did a beautiful job.
yeah, and we did a full width grind. That project was a multi-million dollar project. It cost us an arm and a leg, and that is, keep in mind, that's a major commute route from Highway 17 down to Branson Forte. I mean, both Vine Hill and Granite Creek get a tremendous amount of traffic, really in the last like 6-7 years. And so, if you look at the volume of what Granite Creek Road compared to what like Glen Haven Road, it's just barely a fraction of what Granite Creek gets.
And we are going to do that kind of work on SoCal San Jose.
That's right,
Well,
and
in the
that's the
near
type of
future.
treatments you'll see kind of on our arterials and our major collectors. So that's what you see. I'll sit down.
I'm not sure who was next, but on here.
So
Go
what,
with you.
for $400 a year for 20 years, what kind of road are we gonna get? What he's talking about, and you do a full width deal? Because you
Yeah,
have to
so,
stretch-
yeah, so it's more than a chip seal, it's what we call a cape seal. So what you would get out of it, would you get major basement repairs all the way up from.
Base rock?
I'd say
No,
baseball.
basement, so dig outs, we call those dig outs technically, but we dig the road out all the way down to the base, repair the base, and then put asphalt back in it. And then what we do is we come back over it with what we call a cape seal. A cape seal is a multi-layer process. And what we've been using lately, and it's really actually been doing really well, is it's a rubber chip seal. So we use a rubberized emulsion, and then we put chip rock on top of that. That really helps resist some of the cracking that comes up from the basement. And then we cap it with what we call a type 2 slurry. So it's a multi-layer process, very good wearing surface. I wouldn't say it'd be great to skateboard on because it has a little bit of roughness to it, and really good for rural roads though. So you'd get a fairly kind of brand new looking road. Wouldn't be the type of process we did on Granite Creek though. That is kind of the Cadillac version.
Yeah.
And it's really because of the traffic numbers. That's why we treated it like that as opposed to like what we would do on Glen Haven as well.
The difference that I see between Granite Creek and us is that this is the only way we've got of getting out of here.
No, it's a great point. It's a great point. And that's why I think, and Manu said it, we're still very committed, and I hope you see this, to keeping the road open and passable. And we've put a lot of money into storm damage repairs out here, and we'll continue to do that as they occur. Where we're really challenged with is the surface maintenance, and I think that's really specifically what we're talking about here.
Yeah. I think you
So, speaking of federal funding, how much money did Santa Cruz County get from the infrastructure bill that was passed by Congress?
I think we're
And
still,
what is that going to be designated for?
yeah, I think we're still seeing that work its way through the system.
The most recent one that
Yeah,
just passed,
yeah.
we haven't gotten anything yet. And quite honestly, when you look at the bill, there's not a lot of more money in there for roads, for our county. And what it would qualify for is federal aid routes, of which, and it's kind of no surprise, if you look at the lower part of Glen Haven Road, it actually does qualify for federal funds, but the whole back portion, basically where it gets bad and all the way back to here, doesn't qualify.
So what's the difference? How do you qualify for federal funds?
It has to do with state and federal designations as to how they designate our road system. And it's
Is it the difference between a local road and a minor collector?
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we should change the designation.
Well, it's not a bad idea, but I will say that there's still, even with that, there's still not enough federal aid coming into our county to actually take care of most of our federal aid routes. And when we look at the really top priority federal aid routes, we're talking about roads that carry between 15 and 20 plus thousand cars a day. We're talking about your SoCal drives, your SoCal San Jose roads. These are the roads that the majority of commuters are on, and where just about all of our goods and services are transported back and forth.
Well, we get a lot of big trucks on this road, and they're not residential trucks. I happen to drive one, but there's bigger trucks that come up here to service Kennelin, and they use every inch of this road.
So,
So these roads are getting thrashed, and
Yeah.
ever since the earthquake, there's a lot of undulations that got put in there, and those have to be fixed. I mean, we can't just keep going, you know, it's like a seesaw.
I don't disagree with you, and this problem's been going on for decades, right? I looked at the last time, and maybe some of you folks were around here for the last time the county did a major, it looked like 2003. About 20 years ago was the county, last time the county did a resurfacing project back here. It was sort of resurfaced.
They threw pea gravel down.
Yeah, that's a chip seal. That's a chip seal. Before that, you might have had something in the early 90s. Nothing. Okay, so this is an example, right, of you're seeing very little treatment to a road such as Glen Haven, and it looks the way it looks. You know, I noted when I came back here, I noted the rough sign. Right where the road starts getting really bad. Yeah. So it's kind of nostalgic for me because this was three public works directors ago who was facing this problem in the late 90s, and we just didn't have enough money to take care of roads such as Glen Haven with the type of traffic volumes that they have. That was his solution. His solution was to throw up rough road signs to warn people that, you know, this is going to be a road that you kind of need to drive slow on. And you'll see these throughout the county. So we know this has been going on for several decades. We've been underfunded. I'll make one other note if I can. You know, how we survive on roads by and large is through gas taxes. So your property taxes do not pay for your roads. And if you don't know that you should hear that pretty loud and clear. And I know we all pay exorbitant amounts of property taxes in this county. They do not go to maintain your roads. What goes to maintain your roads is the gas tax. The gas tax had not been touched for over 20 years until SB1, which just came. SB1 came right on the heels of one of the biggest storm years we had in 2017, where we incurred over $100 million of damage to our little 600-mile road network. And we're still digging out of that. I mean, we had 200 so the two sites that you see on Glen Haven Road, I had 200 of those. And some roads were completely closed for up to 3 years. And so we're digging our way out, but we're by and large using the new gas tax that has come forward in the form of SB1 to repair these storm damage repairs. So it's a big challenge. I will add one other thing too. We're uniquely challenged in our county, with the amount of rainfall that we get. We have like a little mini rainforest, and you all know that because you see it up here. You guys get a ton of rain up here, right? I don't know, 50, 60 inches a year up there. Yeah, well, not anymore, right? But if you look at the historic average, and most of the roads that we have, these rural roads, much like Glen Haven, they were built by loggers, not to really any particular standard, right? And so that's what we're trying to keep together as our county road system.
I think right. You, sir, and then one in the back.
I'm just curious, last December, I read a press release in your office that you managed to redirect $6 million or something like that from regional transportation.
Right.
And that was a windfall to the county for the road.
Right.
And just curious, what is the decision-making mechanisms where some of the money goes? I mean, you list out a bunch of projects here and there, but then haven't was nowhere to receive. So I would love to hear your.
Yeah, so that was the RSTP funding, and it comes to the Regional Transportation Commission, of which myself and the other 4 supervisors all sit, and it's allocated in that way so that we can basically decide which are the highest priority projects throughout the county, rather than being allocated based on population. Which, given that it's mostly from gas taxes, I think there's a fair argument could be made that we should just allocate it based on the population. In which case, the county would actually get on average much more than we have been getting, because sometimes that money will go towards a city just because those roads get used more often. So this year, me and the other supervisors got together, said, hey, county roads are a huge priority. We're, for all the reasons I explained, we're dying here. We need more funding. And this year, in this funding cycle, we need $7 million of this, which I think was close to 60% of the total amount available. So that's great. That'll do some major projects on San Andreas Road, which I think has around 2,000 car trips a day. SoCal San Jose Road, which is closer to 15,000. It's going to repair an emergency route, Alba and Jameson. And
just keep in mind, so this is the other thing just to note on that funding, we have to compete for that money. So that money doesn't just get allocated to us, we actually have to compete with the other regional needs in our entire county with all of the incorporated cities that Manu had mentioned earlier. So if we put up a road like Glen Haven Road, it just won't compete. the numbers aren't there. And that's just the cold hard facts of how the money comes to us. And Monu's one of, how many, 11 voting or 12 voting?
12, yeah, just 12.
12 votes, yeah, 12
RTC.
votes. So it's not, he's got to work with the other commissioners as well on this.
You mean the number of users, or what kind of numbers are we talking about?
As far as competing,
Yeah. Or what you mentioned numbers, so what
Well,
are the numbers?
there's 12 votes on the RTC, so I'm one of 12. So, of course, if all 5 supervisors are in agreement, that's 5 of 12, so that's pretty good. But I mean, for example, some of the other projects on that list, I mean, resurfacing 41st Avenue. I mean, that's one. I think it's the busiest street in like if you look at all the cities and the county. So, and we didn't fund that. We funded a couple of the intersections on 41st, 41st and Capitola and 41st and Clares, but that's a project that, Glen Haven would have, type of project Glen Haven would have to compete with against
Yeah.
as well.
so they like regionally significant projects. In other words, they don't like to fund roads that go to nowhere. So, but it's nowhere, it's your homes, we realize that.
Yes, in the back.
So my question is for the $400 parcel funding.
Yeah.
For that road that we're looking at, that would fund, we're paying for it for 20 years. How long is that road fix gonna last? Like, how long is that road gonna be maintained for?
I think we could comfortably say that it would be like a 10 to 15 year design life, but that, as Manu said, so the one benefit is that it's a county maintained road. And so we would actually up our effort as far as like coming back in, hopefully once every 6-7 years, to do some type of a seal coat so that we can try to protect the investment. And that would be the plan. But right now, that would be throwing bad money after bad. We wouldn't just come in and do a seal coat right now, it wouldn't do anything. It would be seal coat like this.
And I'll just also add that, I mean, if you guys come up with that amount of funding, it's a lot easier for me to say, well, yeah, we are going to prioritize this maintenance on Glen Haven Road because this is an example of a local neighborhood stepping up to help close the gap. That's a lot easier than trying to go to all those other roads I mentioned, even just in the first district, that are saying, well, how about me this year? I can make them that argument. Well, help us, meet us halfway, and we can help prioritize your road. I think it's you know.
A couple of questions regarding vehicles and traffic load. If we could show that we have heavier traffic, such as Kinlan traffic in the summer, is that an advantage? And also, kind of related to that, is there a restriction on heavy vehicles such as logging trucks?
I mean, I would think that the traffic count numbers we have, I mean, I don't know when the studies are done, but would capture some of that traffic. Of course, Kenneland does do a lot of busing, so,
Well, a couple things. So, one, we can't restrict logging trucks from being on these roads. It's in the vehicle code, streets and highways code for California, and it's really there so that neighborhood NIMBY doesn't take place, and then commerce can't happen, and people can't log their properties, all these types of things. And so we realize that logging does have a larger impact on roads, as do buses. Same thing with buses. We can't restrict them. If it becomes a safety issue, we'll look at it. But frankly, the volume that you guys have back here, the traffic is so low that we don't even do counts back here, because it's not a through road. And so the likelihood that we would restrict these type of vehicles that you're talking about, that you're concerned about, which admittedly they do beat the road up more than just your everyday sedan, we wouldn't restrict.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so it seems like, we're always paying for storms that happened 5 years ago. So, all
Yeah.
money gets consumed, so we never get ahead. So what is this dedicated $400? Does that get siphoned off into storm repairs, or is that money from?
No, so the way, when you form a county service area, and this would be a subzone within a service area that already exists, the money has to stay within the district boundaries that get created. And how that happens is, a surveyor, where the county surveyor will draw the district boundary, will encompass, the parcels that perceive the benefit, so it becomes a zone of benefit, and it's illegal for us to spend the money outside. So they would have to stay within the zone. And you would have a board, and your board would vote on how the money gets spent. And there would be a full accounting through the county. It goes into a trust fund, and it's safeguarded.
Okay, because I mean, it hasn't rained in a couple of years up here. And we're 1 or 2 rainy seasons from the road just completely failing in certain sections. So
Oh yeah.
but that money doesn't go to repairing that.
No, you guys could though decide to do that, if that's what you wanted to do. So note how long it took us to repair the 2 sites, right? The one earlier, but the other one just got done right last summer. So it's not untypical, and I tell you, I've worked for the county for 20 years. So you say we got no rain this year? In December, we had a rain event that caused 10 other sites up in the San Lorenzo Valley to look like the 2 that you had down here.
Yeah.
So on a very low rain year, and do you remember how much rain we got
Yeah.
in December? Okay, so it was significant, right? So what the Santa Cruz Mountains and our road system have experienced over the last 50 years, this happens a couple times a decade, in some decades like 3 times, where we experience. Now, 2017 was one of the most extraordinary events. But if you go back and you look at 1958, 1982, when we came out of the drought in 93, when we had El Nino in 98, and I came on with the county in 2003, we had an event in 2002, we had 2 in 2006, we had 1 in 2010. Now, these are events where you go, well, we didn't even get close to our average rainfall. Well, you get 10 inches in a day and a half, and things are gonna happen up here. We have a very fragile geologic system. The Santa Cruz Mountains are what they are. It's a young mountain range that is not real consolidated. We don't have a lot of granitic, hard rock mountains here. And if you look at where our roads are built, where are all the roads built? Right next to creeks and rivers, right? Because it was the cheapest, easiest way for the logging companies to get up the canyons, get to the back, get their logs, and get out. That's our road system. And that was created basically in the 1940s, was when the county road system became formalized. So for better or for worse, this is our challenge, and this is why our county uniquely kind of has a low PCI, and traditionally these rural roads, especially up these canyons and mountainous regions, are in the shape they're in. So it's kind of unique to our situation. So yes, answer your question, Kevin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We will be repairing storm damage sites and Manu and I had this discussion too. It's like, oh God, if we could just get through this and then we'll have a little bit more money to start doing more pavement management. Well, let's not count on that. We're gonna get more storms. It may become less frequent, more intense, but we're gonna get it.
All right. So my question for you is, I kind of heard that things are going downhill. They're not going uphill, they're going down.
Yeah, the outlook's not right.
Literally, we're going downhill. The other side of it is, I see that transportation's changing. I see that you talk about gas tax, but I see electric cars as being the future. That's gonna have to change how they tax those, because we're gonna start losing revenue if they don't at some point. So I'm just seeing that as another downward spiral as far as what we have available. So we also have a new, just finishing that thought, I don't know what the effect of this, of what's going on with the new Measure D, whether we look at a train and a trail or a trail only. If we end up with the train, that's a huge investment of money. Does that affect our road systems at all, or is that so separate it doesn't have anything to do with our road systems?
Well, at the most basic level, in order to fund a train, we would basically need another 50-cent sales tax. And that would basically pay for the operating of the train, and we would use the fact that we had that dedicated local revenue source to go out and get more state and federal money. But if we add to the sales tax because we're paying for a train, we can't do it to pay for roads.
Right.
And so it just basically constrains our entire budget. And so, yeah, that's a major factor. Is, given the way transportation is going, I certainly am not excited about making a major investment in a train.
Right.
That's a good.
Yes, sir.
Sorry,
Steve,
you brought up a great point. What's your name? Patrick, really good point. And this is why the gas tax formula for funding road maintenance has been a losing item for about the past couple of decades. So gas usage is kind of going down, right? Because electric vehicles, right? So if you have an electric vehicle, you don't pay at the pump, you don't pay gas taxes, you don't pay for road maintenance. And we've seen that trend go down. And so what's happening nationwide, and we're seeing other states actually start to adopt this, we're gonna go to a vehicle miles traveled model, which is not paying so many pennies per gallon at the pump, but it's paying based on the type of car you drive and how many miles a year you drive. And I suspect, now it's not gonna be in the next 5 years, and I'm not even sure the next 7, but I suspect in the next 10 to 15 years, we will see all the jurisdictions across our country go towards vehicle miles traveled, especially as electric vehicles continue to come on board.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
It sounds like all this stuff is speculation. We're here to find out what we have to do to pave our road. And it looks like if we want to get our road paved, then we are going to have to pay for it. And that's, so I like the $400 deal, and it seems like the best way to go. Otherwise, you're trying to think, well, are these people gonna give us money? Is that person giving us money? Oh, maybe we can get some. And it'd be easier for you, because you'd have the money, right?
It wouldn't even come to me, right? It stays within your area.
Is it 100% participation?
Now, well, that's my second part of the question is, how do you put that together with all the people that live on Glen Haven? Is there some kind of a vote or is
It's a majority. I believe there would be a vote and a majority would have to approve, but then would require 100% participation if a majority approved, but.
Yeah, there is a vote, and it's done through LAFCO, so it's done through our local area formation association. And they have a commission, and there's a process they have. It involves an upfront investment from the community, and so it's much like, I don't know if you all have friends who live on private roads. I lived on a private road for 14 years. We paid $150, and then by the time I left, it was $250 a year. We had 24 parcels on our road. Our road was about a quarter mile long, and that's how we maintained our road. And you know, it took a lot of money up front to do the capital investment to get the road in place. And then once every 5 to 7 years, we painted it black with a slurry seal. And we all did that. We all did that to maintain our roads. And so, I just want to be clear. So what you guys are asking for, you're asking for service above and beyond what another county maintained road would get. To do that, you need to kind of self-help and go through this process. And so it takes community members, it takes activists to step forward and get signatures, hold community meetings, come up with an initial investment. I think it's somewhere, and don't quote me because it's not exactly, but I think it's somewhere around $5,000 to pay for an engineer's report, a preliminary one. And there's a process that we can go through with that. And you get like a local engineering company, it'd be like Iflin or Bowman and Williams. They come out and look at your road, they measure everything out. They really get down to brass tacks on what it would take to actually do this and finance both the capital investment and then if you wanted any future maintenance into the future. So there's a process. Yes.
Yeah,
Are there any other roads in the county that have CSA?
That's what I was gonna ask.
So yes, there's many other CSAs, but they're all on privately maintained roads. We've had the subzone program around for the better part of over a decade. We haven't had any takers.
That's what I was gonna ask. Do you have any existing in the county or even?
Not any subzones, not from CSA 9D. We've had several meetings like this with communities all over the county. This is the same exact meeting of folks who want a higher level of service on their road. And we've brought this idea up many times, and it's complicated, and you have to pay money, right? The alternative is what you have.
Sir, question in the back. All right, sir.
So I've lived in California almost all my life, and what I hear from the government in California is if we just pay a little bit more, we can get all the money. And it's never ending.
Yeah.
I live on a private road. I have a septic system. I don't have children. I pay for county sewers. I pay for schools. I pay road taxes. I pay gasoline tax. And then when I want to go up 680, if I want to use the express lane, I gotta pay extra for a road I already paid for. And I don't even think that would be legal to charge me for what I've already paid for. So why don't you come back, and I don't know how you do it, I'll be happy to donate my share of my sewer tax and my school's tax to the $400 that you collect to do this road. But I have those things and I don't even have them, and I have to pay for them. How is that fair? Like I said, you just want me to pay a little bit more, and when that's done,
That's
pay
life.
The only consolation I can provide there is that this $400 would stay absolutely right here. It's not going anywhere else. It's not trying to balance anyone else's budget. I mean, getting the apportionment issue of who gets what money, as you mentioned with the schools or the sanitation district. I mean, that's a big fight, and it would basically take a amendment to the state constitution to do it. It's that big of a fight, and I mean, I think obviously it's happened. So you said you're happy to support that, yeah? And I said
to support that fight.
As I said, there's enough. It's not just a roads issue. It's also funding for public safety and for parks and many other services here in the county. So
I don't mind paying for what I use and what I get a benefit from, but these things I'm paying for, they're no part of my life.
right, I understand.
Well, not everybody's gonna wanna pay, you know, it's probably gonna end up being more than $400 each. Cause a lot of people have that attitude where they've already paid for it, and it's the rightful attitude. So it'd be a lot of work for all the people who wanna do it, to convince the people who don't wanna do it. So that's gonna be part of the scenario.
It's not that I don't wanna do it.
No, I'm not saying you, I'm just saying in general, there's gonna be people who don't have the money, and they just can't do it. So, as a group, if we all decided we wanted to do it, we'd have to test the waters and see how many other people on this road really wanna do it. Because if it's only 50%, then it isn't gonna work.
Right. And I'm happy to facilitate that outreach to all the property owners on Glen Haven Road with the information that I have available between, the voter rolls or the assessor's
That would be a
office, et
good
cetera.
starting point, I think, if we just test the
Excellent.
waters and see where everybody's at on this,
Excellent.
before we get too excited about spending $400.
You, ma'am, and
I have just a couple of
Right here.
kind
Right
of
here.
specific
Yeah.
questions on how it would
Which is
work.
not much.
You mentioned 20 years with there, so there would be a sunset then on the parcel tax? And it would be in our property tax as like as a line item parcel tax?
So it's a community service area. I'm not sure there would be a sunset unless that's the way it was formed. So it would have to be formed that way. And it's likely most of the CSAs I'm aware of are not formed that way. They're just basically on infinitum until you vote it out.
Because that would be kind of one of my concerns is this never-ending source of revenue.
Yes.
Then eventually, the county will then shrink their portion that they would
Yeah.
contribute. So we would want to get some sort of commitment of matching upfront. We're going to commit to an annual ongoing expense.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of a mechanism about how that would work, and I'm not coming up with anything in my mind right now as far as what the mechanism would be, whether it be a contract that the county has with the CSA or something, but this is one thing to keep in mind, and this is, again, I've lived roads every day for almost my entire 30-year career, and, what we see is if you don't keep up with inflation, right? So we all know the cost of construction. So we were living on gas tax based on $1993 in 2003, and then also in 2013. Could you imagine if your salary was the same as it was in 93, 20 years later? Now, those of you on a fixed income might be able to relate to this, okay? But the ability to do any kind of repairs to your home or any kind of repairs to your cars becomes increasingly difficult, right? As the power of the money that you get on an annual basis per annum in 1993, 20 years into the future, that was really what got us into this problem, was that we as a community and our state legislature did not peg that to like our consumer price index or the cost of inflation, right? So, because it's not just inflation, think about how much more money it costs to do work, to do concrete, to do asphalt 20 years later. So the buying power of the funding that we had in 93, 20 years later, made it so it was a fraction. I think we lost like 40%. It was an extraordinary number. We lost like 40% of the buying power. That's why the county stopped doing pavement maintenance throughout the entire county. And what the county said, with the Board of Supervisors approval, said, look, all we can do is take care of our big routes. I mean, they get hammered so much more than these small little rural routes. We have to say no to the rural routes. We have to say yes to the bigger routes to keep our system together. This is what provides our emergency services. This is how everything gets moved around. And now with Amazon and everything else like that, more and more goods are being spread out throughout the entire county road network. And so that's what got us into this problem. It didn't start to get fixed by the state until 2016, 2017, 2018. And we're finally making kind of inroads to actually have something. And again, we have unique problems in that we live in the Santa Cruz Mountains and they're fragile. So,
I hear you though,
yeah.
on, the design. First of all, you would have the option to sunset it
I think so.
if you wanted to. And also, Steve and I could put our heads together on how we would ensure that you're still getting your fair share of, other county funding and not, just us totally pulling out. I know you're.
Are there other CSAs in the county that are currently existing, so we would have some idea as to the functionality and whether they're working?
No.
So yes and no, right? So yes, in that CSAs, we have multiple CSAs for private roads. We have not had a CSA form that helped to fund maintenance on a public road. But there's certainly, I could certainly introduce you to folks who have CSAs and be happy to tell you about their experience.
Well, that's kind of different, because when you're on a private road, you either have your own private road maintenance committee that designates how much for the annual road maintenance. And generally, the people at the top pay more than the people at the bottom because they use more of the road. And, well, I just have to tell you, years ago, my father told me, if you're gonna buy a home, be sure you buy on a county road, because you don't wanna have to maintain the road. But now we choose here. We have to maintain our own road. So I'm just kind of wondering, is this $400, is it sort of like a district tax? Because that, that becomes a line item on your property taxes. If you look at your property taxes, the base tax is not that much, but it is the addition of all, the dozen district taxes to that then doubles your property taxes. And so I'm wondering, is this one more line item that gets?
I think we have to.
Yeah, it comes out, you'll see it, you'll see a community service area 9D 2 on your property taxes. This would be in addition to that, it'd be a subzone of that. And yes, it would be, yep. And that's why doing it formally, it's sort of, you go through the formal process and everybody within the district has to pay and it shows up on the property taxes.
Because the other thing is the property taxes, they go up 2% every year. Your base property taxes, it increases, I think it was Proposition 13 that allowed the state to increase taxes by 2% a year. So if this becomes part of the property tax, then is this also going to increase by 2% each year?
Not unless you voted for it. And that's, so this was sort of a long-winded answer to your question would be, it's quite likely in 20 years you might all vote to increase it because you want to keep your road in good shape. Think about how much it's going to cost in 20 years to do it. So,
But it won't increase automatically.
No, you vote, you have a board, you have full control over the money.
And is the voting, is that going to be something that's a ballot item? Is that, we voted on in November?
They send it out.
Yeah, it would be sent out individually. It's not going to be on the big. It wouldn't be on the big ballot.
That's right. And then who decides what percentage of vote you need in order for it to pass?
I think it's a simple majority.
I think it is 2, and LAFCO runs the show, basically, our local area formation commission.
Yes, ma'am.
Some of us don't use the road that much, we're only halfway up, but then in the summer, we can't even get out of our driveway because of the trucks and all the cars and stuff going up the road. It's like a freeway out there. All you hear is shh, 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 shh. So it just seems not fair for small users to pay as much as the ones that have big heavy delivery trucks coming all day long and all these cars going up and down and people delivering kids and stuff. The other thing is I love to have the potholes fixed, but if we make the road real smooth, we've already got people speeding terribly.
I'll slow it down, dig a couple of trenches.
Right. Yeah, I mean, with that outlook, I suppose the potholes are a feature.
We've started naming them.
I'm not sure who was, yes, sir.
Yeah, but this road, it never has been paved, it's oil and screenings, and it's a real thin layer of asphalt light on it, so heavy equipment, these big trucks are gonna tear it up very easily, because all you need is a gopher digging underneath there. You collapse part of it, and then it just breaks up into chunks everywhere. Why don't we see if we can get the state of California to donate some of the money that they're spending on that railroad to nowhere and put it to use, and people actually using a road, in existing.
Yeah, I mean, the money's in different buckets when it comes to state funding, but I want to address a question you were kind of touching on, which was the heavy trucks, and also just as you were saying, ma'am, not every user for using the same amount, not being equal based on where you are on the road. I mean, I believe, is that an option for the CSA information, looking at what amount everyone would pay? It could be based on what mile you are up the road.
That's right. And we've seen CSAs form like that. We've also seen CSAs where everyone just says, you know what, we all live on this road, we should all pay an equal amount. So it can go both ways. You're sort of in control of the process as it goes through.
I think I had a question here. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of a broader question, and I'm sure it's on everybody's mind here. And obviously, at the heels of inflation, gas, and rent, and everything, is the county board of supervisors in general, all those folks that control our overall budgets, are they backing off on some of the stuff that's not maybe life-threatening or infrastructure, like the county road here? And stuff that are day-to-day important for all of us just to live, because there's a lot of money that goes out, I don't want to get political, on a lot of things that are not directly impacting us as a community and taxpayers. And so are those folks controlling all the budgets and stuff, backing off on maybe some of the frivolous spending? Because the hard times we're facing it's going to probably get a little worse before it gets better.
I agree with you, and I've looked for the frivolous spending. I haven't found a whole lot. I mean, as I said, you look at the other departments, there's not an obvious place to cut because we're already short-staffed with the sheriff's office, already short-staffed with planning and parks. So it's, and for all the reasons I explained, right, that, Prop 13 took us from here to here, and we've kind of been just trying to make things work ever since.
It's appreciated what you're doing too, honestly. Getting this all together, just a tough nut to swallow.
It is, and I appreciate you all taking the time to have the conversation. And I'm open to any suggestions and ideas as well that we haven't talked about.
I'm just wondering, as we're talking, the idea, I think I heard someone say, we live on a county road, you move up here, it's a county maintained road, and you're like, woohoo, and then you're like, okay, nothing's really happening. I get that you inherited this mess and it's been going on for decades. So part of me is like, I don't want to spend $400 a year for 20 years just to get this road that the county's supposed to maintain fixed, but it doesn't look like it's gonna happen. That's probably a good, thing to really think about.
Yep.
And then some of the people on the lower, I'm concerned about people who maybe cannot afford, like they're maybe, like that gentleman said, maybe hanging on, they can't afford that extras. And then, I live at the very end. I don't want to pay $600 or $1,000 a year for 20 years, but would the county, your office, or Public Works somehow be able to maybe give us a portion? Like, let's say the people on Lower Glen Haven, you know, closer to Cherryvale down there, they pay $200 or something, where us on the Upper Glen Haven are paying $400, and maybe the county just has to pay the difference, whatever that, you know, make up that little difference. Like, give us a sliver to help us just get there, you know? Would that be something?
Yeah, and
that
I
can
think
happen,
that's
or-
what Steve was explaining about us helping to pay for the regular maintenance as well, right? I mean, it makes it's a much more sustainable situation. Yes, this hasn't been done on other county maintained roads, but we've got a big problem. If you guys are willing to be part of the solution, it's a lot easier to say, all right, well, the county's gonna do its part as well, because this is the way.
Right, otherwise, like Pam said, then we're stuck, not only do we get our road, we get this brand new great road, but then we have to continue paying this to maintain it, and we don't wanna get stuck doing that either, you know, we kinda just wanna, I mean, I don't know how many people are gonna even be here in 20 years, so it's gonna be passed on to the next owner, you know?
Right.
But, you know, it's just something to think about long-term, and, if we can get it paved and get that started, then I understand you guys are committed to maintaining it, cause you'll have now this pristine road, and you don't want it to go back to the state it's in. So I see you're committed there, but I'm just talking about the whatever, $1.5 million cost, or maybe, you know, even more, to just get the thing paved without putting too much hardship on people that can't really, you know, can't afford it, or feel like it's not fair because they're at the bottom of the road and they only use a part. I don't know, that could be, is that something that the initial discussions would be with you guys, or?
The initial study that would be done.
Okay.
We would also do like a rate, you know, once we.
Like some options, like you said, like it gets more expensive as you go up the road, but maybe there's a cap, I don't know, just to make it.
There are different ways to structure a CSA,
Okay.
a road CSA, and so, you know, when as the gentleman asked, well, what's the process? You know, it's like, well, you start with an engineer's report, you get the community together, you test the waters. Do we actually have support? Do we have at least 50% of this? And then if it feels like, hey, we do, there's initial investment that everybody puts in. It's not huge, and like I said, I'm just something like $5,000 to get a report done. In that report, it'll lay out some options, and one of the options would be, hey, if everybody pays the same amount, what do we need from each parcel to get to this number for our capital investment? And then if we do a structure where, you know, at the very beginning of the road you pay very little, but at the very end, because you're one of the biggest users, you pay quite a bit more, we could also look at that as well. And so you can kind of direct how that report goes, and there would be some choices in there for the community.
And do we get to choose who pays the road? Like, could we choose Granite, like, or do we have to use someone the county says we have to
So,
use?
interesting question. So because you're in with the county, you know, process, you have to basically do the low bid process that we go through. It's a fair bid. We're administering the contract and everything like that. So state contracting code for government public works projects is basically.
Even though we're paying for it privately?
Yes, yes. Yeah, it's unfortunate, unless it's like less than a certain amount of money, but your project isn't even close to that, so.
I think you're next, sir.
I've heard you mention Prop 13 a couple of times now. Are you blaming part of this problem that we're having on Prop 13? Yeah. Or what?
It did constrain local government budget significantly, and it also fixed us with the structure we had in 1978, right? And so even as things have changed, there's you know, and maybe 13% towards the county made sense back when less people lived in the unincorporated county. Would it make this, you know, would it be the same portion today? Probably not, now that more than half the
What I'm
county
saying
population
is
is.
there's probably a rather large portion of us are affected definitely by Prop 13. But correct me if I'm wrong, but when you sell your house to somebody else, they get taxed under a new rate.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So those of us who are covered by Prop 13 have been here for quite a while and really can't afford to keep driving on this road for 40, 50 years like we've been doing. It's hard on the cars, it's hard on the people. And, you know, we need something. We do. And I don't think Prop 13 is an excuse for cutting funding at all. Or even doing away with Prop 13.
I'm not suggesting we do away with Prop 13. And when I talk about a statewide initiative, it would be going after that apportionment schedule, right? So that instead of Santa Cruz County getting 13%, maybe we get, you know, we can get towards the average. I'm not suggesting we get rid of Prop 13 at all, but and all I'm saying is that it's a constraining factor, it largely locked us into where we are.
Shouldn't be that much of a constraining factor by now. There are many people on this road who have purchased since '78, and that's making up for any shortfall that those of us who are under 13 would be paying, along with our 2% every year.
We are seeing growth in the property tax rate overall. I think it's about 4 to 5% on average per year, and that helps. But costs are going up as well. So the fundamental problem, though, is that 13% that the county gets, considering more than half the population in the whole county lives in the unincorporated area and uses county services for planning, public safety, the sheriff, parks,
But aren't
and the
covered by
roads.
Prop 13, that's my point.
No,
You're getting more from them.
right, but it doesn't change the rate that we get from any one property owner.
Change the amount.
Right. Yes, and as I said, that is we continue to see overall property tax increases, like in terms of total revenues coming into the county, about 4 to 5% right now.
At least
That much.
What's involved in trying to change the rate? I think you mentioned that briefly earlier, but it sounds like it's pretty complex.
To change that 13% that we get, that is going to basically take a statewide ballot initiative.
Yeah.
Which,
People in Southern California are not gonna vote for it.
well, if you look at how much each of the counties gets as far as a portion, there's plenty of large counties that aren't getting a huge share. And I mean, it could be, it needs more research, but it would certainly reduce a lot of paperwork, right? We spend a lot of time applying for state grants, having county staff, saying, hey, we need this money for this. State, will you please give it to us? Someone at the state is saying, oh, geez, you want this money? Well, let me look at these applications. All this, for our money just to come back to us, right? So if we move to a more county-centric model rather than a state-centric model, which is what we have by default now, it could actually get a lot of the waste out of the system and a lot more local control on some of these big issues like fire and roads. So I'm not against going that route. It's hard, but I think that you could probably make a pretty good argument statewide for that and get more than 50% of state voters to come along.
Can you help us with that, and would some of the other supervisors be behind it?
I know I'm not the only supervisor that's looked at this problem, so yeah, I'm happy to talk to a colleague, and I can only talk to one before we vote on stuff, but I'm happy to do some more of the groundwork for it, yes.
Even if that happened, we wouldn't be getting, he's not gonna guarantee us that they're gonna fix Glen Haven Road, even if they get more money.
That's the problem, we want
Yeah.
Glen Haven Road fixed now.
Well,
We don't wanna wait around and have people running around trying to change people's mind or get a little piece of this.
Yeah, I mean, we gotta talk to millions, yes, that process takes talking to millions of people. It would be a state, as soon as we get it on the ballot, it'll probably be 2024, right? So that's a long process.
So we're basically doomed to that percentage forever.
Unless we change it. That's what I'm saying.
But nobody's gonna want to go to the effort, it sounds like, to change it, so we're always gonna
But
get.
he's
that.
saying there's
The
other
state
counties that
doesn't
are
wanna
not
give us
getting
money
their fair
back.
share either, so it could be reallocated.
Yeah.
We're not the only county. It's an important problem to address. I've seriously thought about spending a lot of my time doing it, because otherwise I'm gonna spend, the rest of my term stuck with having this same conversation, if not about roads, then with about public safety or parks or any other issues that we continue to
It's the
talk about.
hardest option for sure, but I think it's the best return on investment.
Sure.
But it's a lot of.
It's worth a try.
Yeah.
It's worth the effort because it's the right thing to do. Then at least like you said, it's a lot of time, but saving time in the long run.
Right. Yes, sir.
Isn't that something the state assembly and the Senate could pass if they really wanted to do it? We don't need a ballot initiative.
I would have to look at, in theory, because they did make all the apportionment, the majority of the apportionment
They
rules.
vote to change since the Senate?
I think it would take a 3/4 majority to make that pass, and trying to get 3/4 of our state legislature to agree on anything.
Yeah.
Because every winner has a loser.
that's the bigger challenge.
But there'll be places, there'll be ones that.
System is 70%.
Right, and the other thing is,
Most scooters will vote against it, and they're way more than we are.
That's what I'm saying.
So, yeah, they'll never support it.
but Southern California has lower rates than San Francisco. San Francisco is pretty unique. I mean, it was the largest city or certainly the oldest city, right? Next question. No other questions?
I'm just curious if you could just take nothing set in stone, but how many people in this room would be interested in just discussing the $400 a month CFA for our road, just interested in exploring it more?
Yeah, that'd be the first step.
Okay. Well, yeah, then we can get more information together. I mean, I'm happy to put together a poll for the whole road as well. As I said, between the voter rolls, which I'm allowed to use for official government purposes, and this being one of them, I think we could get the word out there and ask people to participate based on their address, and we could get a sense.
It's hard because we wouldn't know the exact dollar amount, but you could say it could be,
Yeah.
like you'd say, just could be structured and we get to vote on that and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
You guys were talking about the county's low bid process, et cetera, so we have our board for Glen Haven, right? Would we have any input on how the road's designed? Would we have any input on how the contractor's selected? I know it's per low bid, but would we be involved in helping make that selection?
You would, it would still have to be the state contracting code, public works, style contract where we have a low bid process. But we have a process to reject bids where you just say, no, we don't like these numbers, they're too high, we're just gonna reject them all and not do the project. And you definitely would have some say on the design as well. Yeah.
So before I retired, I worked for a place that did the low bid stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
And they were getting such poor workmanship and poor results that they put in place ways to not necessarily have to take the low bid. They could judge quality or response or company size. There were various things that would exclude a company even though they put low bid.
Correct.
Is that in place or is it strictly low bid?
So we have some things we can put in there, like contractor qualifications. We can put that into the contract, like you have to be experienced in this style of work.
Right.
But there are limitations to rejecting low bids.
Yes.
So because it's supposed to be a fair public contracting process, and so we would follow the state process. There are limitations to it, but you can get crafty. You can put, that's what our specifications.
To make sure that, can you vet the contractor?
We do.
Talk to people that have used
Well,
them
so
for
we put in, it all has to be in our specification. There's a very standard process that we go through. You can't just put stuff in there like, we don't like contractors that drive red trucks, So, it has to be, there's certain limitations for what you can put in there, but you can put qualifications in there for the, type of project that you're doing.
Do they have to be local contractors? or-
No, they do not. In fact, you can't put that into a state public works contracting. Interesting that you asked that question. That's illegal to do that.
I think it's an important question because I think the low bid process was on full display on that last slide that they fixed. Yeah. They obviously were doing something wrong. It took them way too long. They had to redo everything. I mean, I think, that's the hesitation I think we would
That
all
was a
have.
design problem. They kept changing the design.
Yeah.
It can be challenging to work with contractors. If you've all worked with contractors on your properties, you know the challenge of even selecting your own contractor. So it's something we deal with all the time, and it's an ongoing job for us to do that. But
I think we're a long way from that point. We just need to find whether we need to do it or not. If we need to do it, then we can have all these other discussions.
Right.
Exactly.
I was just gonna say, I think, once we kind of pull everybody, we get some interest, then trying to collect the money to hire Bowman and Williams or whomever would be a little bit of a hindrance, and so Kevin would like to pay for that $5,000. On the buses, and we do have, food trucks that come up here. We also have 450 acres that we're preserving, very, very low density for what we have up here, and we want to be good neighbors, and if you ever do have any issues with speeding or whatever, please call me, or I'm Pam at Caroline, you can send me an email. I'll do what I can, the best I can, but we wanna be good neighbors to you guys, and we've been here for almost 8 years.
Great.
And, we love being here.
Thank you.
Even if everyone, the residents, and it went through, the best case scenario, given your constraints with all the jobs you have, and everyone wants the road, are we looking at 1 year, 2 years? Let's say everything fell into place the way you would, ideal. What would be a reasonable timeline of when you would see results?
That's a great question. It kind of depends upon how quickly the district formation can go, and I haven't been involved with the CSA. We have a specific group within county.
But you know how many projects you have on your board, and you probably have most of your staff booked out, or you just not like that?
Well, so again, we have a specific group within Public Works that does the CSA formation process. So that's not part of my group, but I work very closely because it's a road CSA. I would guess I would think we'd be able to get a project out within, a year and a half or so. I would hope that we'd be able to do, maybe it would take the first year, 6 months to a year to form it. And then maybe, then it would be another year to finance it.
So maybe 2 years would be the
It seems
best
like.
you could hope for.
That's the
Just to
benefit.
get an idea. Yeah.
I think that's the benefit of taking matters into your own hands. As a relatively small area, right, is things can actually move a little bit faster than if we were trying to increase the CSA countywide.
Yeah.
For example. All right. Well, there's no further questions. I mean, I think Steve and I
Great questions, by the way.
appreciate the interest. Appreciate the support from Kenneland. We'll do a little bit more groundwork as far as the numbers, so that when we do put that survey out there, we can provide a realistic view of what the next steps would be, what the process would be, and how things would unfold. But we'll continue to collect that information and share it with you. And if you haven't already, please put your email address down on the sheet in the back so that we can make sure to get that next step out there to everyone. Thank you.
I just want to thank Annie for all of the Allens in general for all of your hard work organizing this. And I didn't want to pack something else onto this meeting and want to make sure we're fully focused on the road. But I know a lot of you guys are really interested in talking about fire escape routes and other, earthquake, we haven't had one in a long time now, and things like that. I'd love to get another community meeting together. I'm happy to host it up here again. Talk about, water tanks and where we have water storage. We've got a whole bunch of water here, of course, at Kenneland, and how we can be together as a community if something were to happen at the end of Glen Haven. We all get stuck up here in an earthquake or what have you. So, do you have an email list of everyone that came?
I have, if someone's not on my email list, please see me afterwards, but I have about 30 or 35 people on my email list that I've been emailing.
Yep.
And then I know some people got Mountain's letter, and then I put it on next door, so, and those people, somehow you found out.
So we'll try to get another meeting together, maybe before the summer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great.